On my engagement day, I caught my fiancé kissing my twin sister. My family celebrated their true love with champagne. 5 years later, I returned as a millionaire CEO while she served my table. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. It all began on a perfect afternoon in early June. I can still feel the warmth of the sun on my skin, the smell of freshly cut grass and the roses my mother had insisted on planting all along the garden path. My parents had gone all out for my college graduation party. They'd rented a large white tent for the backyard, with fairy lights strung up everywhere and tables draped in crisp, white linen. It was everything I could have ever dreamed of to celebrate such a huge milestone. For long years studying computer science had finally paid off, and I was just radiant. I felt like I was floating. My parents had invited everyone. My professors, friends from high school I hadn't seen in years, relatives who drove hours just to be there. And right by my side, holding my hand, was Preston. Preston, he was handsome in that classic, all-American way. He was wearing the navy blue suit we'd picked out together the week before. We'd been together for 4 years, since the end of freshman year, and he was my rock. As we greeted guests, he kept whispering little jokes in my ear, making me laugh even when I was trying to be formal with my dad's business partners. We had our whole future planned out. We were going to move to Denver together right after the summer. He'd already landed a fantastic job offer at a tech startup, and I had a few promising interviews lined up. I can't wait to start our life together, he murmured, kissing my cheek as my mom snapped yet another photo. Just you and me, Audrey. And standing right next to me, beaming, was my twin sister, Valerie. As always, she was stunning. She'd chosen a vibrant red dress for the occasion, something that made her stand out in the sea of pastel summer colors. She always had that gift, that natural ability to draw every eye in the room without even trying. We were identical twins, but we were night and day. I was the quiet, responsible one. The studious one. Valerie was the spark. The charismatic, outgoing one everyone instantly adored. The party was perfect. The food was delicious, the music was just right, and I was surrounded by so much love. I felt like I was on top of the world, with a brilliant future stretching out right in front of me. Then, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over everything, Preston clinked his glass for attention. My heart started to beat a little faster. He smiled that charming smile of his, the one that always made my knees weak. If I could have everyone's attention, he began, his voice clear and confident. Today, we're here to celebrate Audrey. She's the most brilliant, kind, and beautiful woman I've ever known. He turned to me, his eyes full of what I thought was love. And I don't want to let another day go by without making sure she knows she's my forever. And then, right there, in front of our entire family and all our friends, he got down on one knee. A collective gasp went through the crowd. My hands flew to my mouth, tears instantly welling up in my eyes. He opened a small velvet box, revealing the most beautiful, delicate diamond ring I had ever seen. Audrey, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you marry me? I was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes, I choked out. Yes, of course, yes. The garden erupted in cheers and applause. He slid the ring onto my finger, and it was a perfect fit. He stood up and kissed me, a deep, passionate kiss that felt like a promise. As we broke apart, the first person to reach us was Valerie. She threw her arms around both of us in a tight hug, her red dress a flash of color against Preston's navy suit. Oh, I'm so happy for you guys, she squealed, her smile wider and brighter than anyone's. I knew it. I just knew it. It was the single most perfect moment of my life. A beautiful party, a college degree, and a ring on my finger from the man I was going to spend the rest of my life with. I was so blissfully, stupidly happy. I had no idea that in less than an hour, that perfect world would be nothing but a pile of ash. After the whirlwind of congratulations and happy tears, the party settled back into a comfortable rhythm. People were eating dessert, my uncles were telling loud stories by the grill, and I was just trying to catch my breath, my left hand feeling wonderfully heavy with its new addition. I was talking with my favorite professor when I reached up to touch my hair and my heart dropped. The brooch. My grandmother's brooch. It was a small, sterling silver bird with a tiny sapphire eye, a gift she'd given me for my 18th birthday before she passed away. It was my most treasured possession, and I had pinned it to my dress for good luck. Now, it was gone. "I'll be right back," I told my professor, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. I retraced my steps through the garden, my eyes scanning the grass, but it was getting dark and it was impossible to see anything. I remembered taking it off for a minute earlier when a child had hugged me, afraid it would poke him. I'd put it in my clutch, which I'd left in the car when we arrived. "I'm just running to the car to grab something," I told Preston, who was deep in conversation with my dad about baseball. "Want me to come with you?" he asked, already turning. No, it's fine," I said with a wave. "It'll take 2 seconds. You stay here." I left the warm bubble of the party and walked down the long driveway to where the cars were parked along the street. The cool night air felt good after the stuffiness under the tent. After a few hours of being on, the quiet was a relief. I found my car, unlocked it, and there was my clutch on the passenger seat. I opened it, and a wave of relief washed over me. The silver brooch was safely tucked inside. I held it for a moment, the cool metal a comfort in my palm, and headed back towards the party, a smile back on my face. But as I walked back up the driveway, something felt off. The party was still going, music was still playing, but a strange, quiet unease started to creep in. I re-entered the tent and looked for Preston. He wasn't with my dad anymore. I scanned the crowd, but I couldn't see his navy suit anywhere. That's odd, I thought. Then I looked for Valerie. Her bright red dress would be easy to spot. But she was gone, too. This was strange. Valerie lived for the spotlight. For her to disappear from a party where she was the center of attention, well, second only to me for once, was completely out of character. I started to feel a little worried. Maybe they'd gone inside to talk about something. Valerie and Preston always got along great. She even helped me pick out his birthday gift last year. Still, I couldn't shake the uncomfortable feeling of them both disappearing at the same time. That's when my cousin, Jessica, came over to me. She had a hesitant look on her face, like she wasn't sure if she should say something. "Audrey, are you looking for Preston and Valerie?" she asked, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, have you seen them?" Jessica took a deep breath. "Well, I think I saw them heading toward the old boathouse about 15 minutes ago. I thought maybe they were planning another surprise for you, you know?" My heart sped up. The boathouse? It was at the far end of the property, down by the lake. It was private, dark, and definitely not part of the party. But I prodded, sensing there was more. She finally looked at me, her expression full of pity. "It's just, they looked really close, Audrey. You know when you can just feel a weird vibe in the air?" I didn't want to believe what I was hearing, but something deep inside me, a cold, sharp intuition, knew I had to see for myself. I thanked Jessica, my voice sounding distant and strange, and I walked away from the lights and the music, towards the darkness at the edge of the lake. Every step felt heavier than the last, and I kept praying, begging, that I was wrong. The path to the boathouse was unlit, and I had to use the light from my phone to see. The happy sounds of the party faded behind me, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore. The air grew cooler. I remember the crunch of gravel under my dress shoes, a sound that seemed way too loud in the silence. The boathouse was just a dark silhouette against the moonlit water. It was old and weathered, a place we used to play in as kids. Now, it felt sinister. As I got closer, my breath caught in my throat. I heard it. A low laugh. A woman's laugh. It was Valerie's. I crept closer, my body moving on autopilot while my mind screamed at me to turn around and run. The big wooden door was slightly ajar. Through the crack, a sliver of light from a phone cast long shadows inside. I held my breath and peeked through. And then I saw them. And my world, the perfect, beautiful world I was living in just minutes before, shattered into a million pieces. Preston and Valerie were wrapped in each other's arms, kissing with a ferocious intensity that made me feel sick to my stomach. This wasn't a friendly kiss. This wasn't a congratulations on your engagement kiss. This was the kind of kiss he used to give me when we were alone, full of a hunger and a desperation that I hadn't seen from him in a long, long time. His hand was tangled in her hair, pulling her closer. Her hands were clutching the front of his shirt, her red dress a splash of lurid color in the dim light. I stumbled back, pressing my hand against my mouth to stifle a sob. My legs felt weak, and I ducked behind a large oak tree nearby, trying to process the impossible image seared into my brain. My twin sister. My sister was kissing my fiancé. The man who had put a ring on my finger less than an hour ago. The man I was planning to build a family with. Then I heard their voices, hushed and urgent. I can't do this anymore, Val, Preston whispered, his voice ragged. I can't keep pretending. Pretending? My mind reeled. I know, Valerie whispered back, stroking his face. I can't either. She's never going to understand what we have. What they have? And then came the words that would echo in my mind for years, the words that felt like a physical blow, knocking all the air from my lungs. Preston rested his forehead against hers. For years, he breathed. For years of pretending it was her I wanted. For years. My entire relationship with him was a lie. For years of my life, built on a lie. For years of believing I was loved, when in reality, I was just a placeholder. A convenient stand-in for the person he really wanted. My own sister. I couldn't stay there another second. I couldn't breathe. I turned and ran, blindly, stumbling through the dark. Tears streamed down my face, hot and furious. I didn't care about being quiet. I didn't care about anything. I ran past the edge of the party, a blur of motion past guests who were too busy laughing to notice the ghost-white face of the girl who was supposed to be the guest of honor. I didn't stop until I got to my car. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the door open. I threw myself inside, slammed the door, and just let out a guttural sob that felt like it was being torn from my soul. I had to get away. Away from the party, away from my family, away from them. I started the car and drove, with no destination in mind, leaving my perfect life burning in the rearview mirror. The streetlights blurred into long streaks as I drove through the night, tears making it almost impossible to see. I had no idea where I was going. I just drove until the city started to thin out and the roads became quieter. I finally saw the dim, flickering light of a motel sign. It looked seedy and forgotten, but it was a place to hide. I pulled in, paid for a room with the cash I had in my wallet, and locked the door behind me. The room was small and smelled of stale cigarette smoke and bleach. The bedspread was a faded, scratchy floral pattern. I sank down onto the edge of the bed, still in my beautiful party dress, and just stared at the peeling paint on the wall. The silence was deafening. It was in that silence that my phone started to buzz. It was a barrage of messages, first from Preston, then from Valerie. It was like they had coordinated their attack to destroy what little was left of my heart. Preston's message was brutally direct. No apology, no remorse. Just cold, hard facts. Audrey, I know you saw us. I didn't want it to happen like this, but I can't keep faking it. These 4 years were an attempt to get over what I feel for Valerie, but it didn't work. She's the one I really love. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Wasting your time. Those 4 words hit me like a punch to the gut. For years of my life, my love, my loyalty, was just wasted time to him. I read the message over and over, each word a fresh stab of pain. A few minutes later, Valerie's message came through. Audrey, I know this is hard to understand, but what I feel for Preston is something I can't control. Love just happens, it's not something we choose. I hope one day you can forgive us and accept our happiness. Accept their happiness? I wanted to scream. I threw the phone across the room with all my strength. It hit the wall with a sickening crack and clattered to the floor. How dare she talk about love and happiness? How dare she ask for my forgiveness after she had just detonated my entire life? I spent the whole night awake in that miserable room, alternating between uncontrollable sobbing and a hollow, empty void that felt like it was consuming me. In the early hours of the morning, I crawled over and picked up my phone. The screen was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks spreading across it, but it still lit up. And there were more messages. From my mom, Audrey, where are you? Everyone is worried sick. You just vanished from your own party. And then a follow-up a little later, Preston told us what happened. Honey, these things in life are complicated. Please come home so we can talk. Complicated. That was the word she chose for this utter betrayal. Then, a message from my dad, the one that truly broke me. Audrey, I know you're hurting, but you need to be mature about this situation. Preston and Valerie are truly in love. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. Those words echoed in my head. My own father was defending them. Defending the betrayal of his daughter by his other daughter and the man who was supposed to become his son-in-law. He was treating it like some unavoidable, natural event, like a rainstorm. But the final message, the one that sealed my fate, was another one from Valerie. I know you must be angry. But you need to understand, we tried to resist this. For years, we tried to ignore what we felt for each other. Preston only started dating you because he thought it would help him get over me. I encouraged you too for the same reason. But we couldn't keep fighting true love. I hope you can be the sister you've always been and support us. I read that message through the cracked screen, my vision blurry with tears. He only dated me to get over her. I was not a choice. I was a strategy. A failed experiment. And now, she was asking me, the collateral damage of their true love, for my support. My blessing. It was then that another notification popped up on my shattered screen. A friend from college, Maria. Her message was short. Audrey, I am so sorry. I don't know if you've seen this, but you should probably stay off of Instagram. Of course, I couldn't resist. I opened the app. And there it was. A new post from Valerie, uploaded less than an hour ago. It was a selfie of her and Preston, their heads close together, smiling blissfully at the camera. And the caption was the final twist of the knife. Finally free to love. Less than a day after they destroyed my life, they were celebrating their romance publicly. As if I never existed. As if the 4 years I shared with Preston were just some inconvenient obstacle that had finally been removed. In that moment, sitting on the dirty floor of a cheap motel room, I made a decision. I couldn't hide forever. I had to go back. I had to face them. But one thing was certain. The naive, trusting Audrey who accepted being second best? She died in that motel room. And someone new, someone much colder, was about to be born. After 3 days of living off vending machine snacks and lukewarm coffee in that dingy motel, I finally gathered the courage to go home. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just drove back to the house I grew up in, the new engagement ring feeling like a lead weight in my pocket. I used my key to let myself in, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The scene that greeted me in the living room was worse than anything I could have imagined. It was so surreal I thought I might be hallucinating. Preston was sitting on our family sofa, the same sofa where we used to watch movies together on Sundays. And he had his arm wrapped around Valerie. My parents were sitting in the armchairs opposite them, smiling and chatting animatedly with the happy new couple. On the coffee table in the middle of them all was an open bottle of champagne and 4 used glasses. They were celebrating. "Audrey," my mother exclaimed, her smile faltering slightly as she saw me standing in the doorway. "Thank goodness you're back. We were just celebrating the good news." "Celebrating?" The word came out as a choked whisper. "What good news?" Valerie stood up, still holding Preston's hand, and walked towards me with a radiant smile, as if she had just won the lottery. "Audrey, I know you're upset. But now that you've had some time to process everything, can we please talk about this like adults?" "Process everything?" I repeated, my gaze sweeping over the smiling, expectant faces of my family. "You betrayed your own sister, with my fiancé of 4 years, at my engagement party." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Audrey," my father intervened, his tone dismissive. "Nobody betrayed anyone. These things of the heart just happen. The important thing is that Preston and Valerie are happy together." I turned to him, incredulous. "Dad, they were kissing in secret in the boathouse while I was inside being congratulated by our family." My mother stood up and came towards me, using that soft, condescending tone she always used when she thought I was overreacting. "Honey, I know it's hard when we lose someone we love. But you need to think about your sister's well-being, too. They tried to resist what they felt out of respect for you, but true love always wins." "True love?" I was starting to feel hysterical. "Mom, he was with me for 4 years. We were planning on getting a mortgage, starting a life together." Preston finally spoke, still sitting comfortably on the sofa as if he owned the place. "Audrey, I'm sorry things happened this way. I really did try to love you the way you deserved, but I couldn't fight what I feel for Valerie. It would have been worse to lie to you for the rest of our lives." The casual way he talked about trying to love me was like a physical blow. For years of my life, reduced to a failed attempt at loving the wrong person. Valerie stepped closer, putting a hand on my arm. I flinched away as if her touch was poison. "You have to understand," she said, her eyes welling up with fake tears. "This was so hard for us, too. Do you think it was easy, hiding our feelings for so long? Pretending we were just brother and sister-in-law when what we felt was so much deeper? You were pretending because you were brother and sister-in-law." I shot back. "Audrey, I need your support in this," she pleaded, the tears now streaming down her face. "You've always been my best friend, my other half. I can't lose you, too." I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "What exactly have you lost, Valerie? From where I'm standing, it looks like you got everything you ever wanted." That's when my father lost his patience. "That's enough, Audrey. You're being selfish and immature. Your sister has found the love of her life, and you should be happy for her instead of making all this drama." Drama. He called it drama. But it was my mother's next words that shattered the last bit of my composure. "You know what this is, Audrey? It's the same old story. You've always been jealous of Valerie. Ever since you were little girls, anytime she got a little attention, you'd pull this same act. Jealous. They thought this was about jealousy. They thought my heart being ripped out and stomped on by my own family was just a childish tantrum. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. The grief, the hurt, it all vanished, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. "You know what?" I said, my voice eerily calm as I looked at each of them. "You're right. I am being selfish. I am being immature. How dare I be upset that my twin sister stole my fiancé and my family is celebrating it with champagne?" "Nobody stole anyone," Valerie sobbed. "You can't control who people love." "You're right, Valerie," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "He was never really mine. And you know what else? Neither were any of you. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned without another word and walked upstairs to my bedroom. I pulled up my 2 largest suitcases and started packing, methodically folding clothes, my movements calm and deliberate. Half an hour later, Valerie appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing? You can't just leave." "I can," I replied without looking at her. "In fact, it's exactly what I'm going to do." "And where will you go? You don't have any money, you don't have a job lined up yet. You have nothing." "I'll figure it out," I said, zipping the last suitcase shut. "I always have." I walked past her and carried my bags downstairs. My parents were waiting in the living room. Preston was gone. "You're overreacting, my father tried one last time." "Nobody is kicking you out." "You're not kicking me out," I said, pulling the front door open. "But you've made it perfectly clear that I'm not welcome here unless I accept this. So I'm just making it easier for everyone." I walked out that door and never looked back. I didn't just lose a fiancé that day. I lost my entire family. The drive away from my childhood home was a blur. I just drove west, with no destination in mind, the 2 suitcases in my backseat holding everything I owned in the world. I had a few $1,000s in my savings account, money I'd been saving for a wedding dress, ironically. That was it. That was my entire net worth. I drove for 2 days, stopping only for gas and cheap coffee, sleeping for a few hours at a time in sketchy rest stops. I ended up in Omaha, Nebraska. Why Omaha? I don't know. I'd never been there. It just seemed far enough away, a place where no one knew me, where I could be completely anonymous. Finding an apartment was the first harsh dose of my new reality. I found a tiny, depressing studio in an old building with peeling paint and a landlord who looked at me with suspicion. The place smelled like dust and regret. My first night there, I didn't even unpack. I just sat on the floor, leaning against the wall in the dark, and listened to the sounds of the city. I had never felt so utterly alone. The next few weeks were a miserable haze. I spent my days on a cheap laptop, applying for any job I could find. Tech jobs, admin jobs, retail jobs. I sent out hundreds of applications and got nothing back but silence or automated rejection emails. My savings were dwindling fast. Some days, the despair was so heavy it felt like a physical weight on my chest, making it hard to even get out of bed. I remember one afternoon, I tried to make myself a simple box of mac and cheese, and I let the water boil over and burned the pot. I just stood there and watched it smoke, and then I slid down to the kitchen floor and cried until I had no tears left. I finally got a job. It wasn't in my field. It was a temporary, mind-numbing data entry position at a huge, soulless insurance company. I worked the night shift, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The office was a sea of gray cubicles under harsh fluorescent lights that hummed constantly. My job was to stare at a screen and type numbers from one spreadsheet into another. That was it. My coworkers were just as tired and defeated as I was. We barely spoke. We just sat in our little boxes, tapping away at our keyboards in the dead of night. During my break, I'd drink the bitter, stale coffee from the machine and stare out the window at the empty streets below. I was invisible. I was nobody. And in a strange way, I was grateful for it. Being nobody meant I didn't have to be the girl whose sister stole her fiancé. I was just a ghost in a gray cubicle. I lived like that for months. Work, sleep, eat cheap ramen, repeat. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't make any friends. I ignored the worried voicemails from my old college roommate, Maria. I was just surviving. But one night, sitting in my cubicle at 3 a.m., staring at the endless rows of numbers, something inside me shifted. I looked at my reflection in the dark computer screen. I saw a hollowed-out version of myself. And I was suddenly filled with a white-hot rage. This was not my life. This was not who I was. Valerie and Preston and my family, they had taken everything from me. But they were not going to take this. They were not going to win. That night, on my break, instead of staring out the window, I opened my laptop and enrolled in an online certification course for advanced project management. It was the first step. The first glimmer of a fight they never saw coming. For the next 6 months, my life was a grueling routine. I'd work my overnight shift at the insurance company, then come home as the sun was rising, force myself to study for 3 hours, and then collapse into bed. I was exhausted, but for the first time since that horrible night, I had a purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was fighting for a future. With my new certification, I started applying for real jobs again. This time, I was more strategic. I focused on smaller tech companies, places where I might not get lost in the shuffle. And one day, I got a call. It was a small, local software development company called Innovatech. They wanted to interview me for a junior project manager position. I was so nervous during the interview I thought I was going to be sick. The hiring manager was a man in his late 50s named David. He had kind eyes and a calm demeanor. He looked at my resume, which had a huge, unexplained gap of almost a year. "You've been doing data entry for the past 8 months," he said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. "Your degree is in computer science from a top university. Why the change?" I took a deep breath and told him a partial truth. I had a difficult family situation that required me to move and take the first job I could get. "But this," I said, gesturing around his office, "this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I've been working towards." I don't know what he saw in me that day. Maybe it was the desperation, or maybe it was the fire in my eyes. But he hired me. Walking into Innovatech on my first day felt like stepping into a different world. It was a small office, maybe 30 people in total. It was bright and loud and full of energy. People were collaborating, laughing, drawing on whiteboards. It was everything my last job wasn't. My new colleagues, especially a senior developer named Mark and a woman in marketing named Sarah, took me under their wing. They didn't ask about my past. They just included me. They invited me to lunch. They asked for my opinion in meetings. They treated me like I mattered. For the first time in a very long time, I started to feel like a person again. I threw myself into the work. I was determined to prove that David's faith in me wasn't a mistake. I stayed late, I asked questions, I learned everything I could. About 3 months in, David called me into his office. "Audrey," he said, getting straight to the point. "We have a problem. The LogiSync project is a complete disaster. The client is unhappy, the team is demoralized, and we're about to lose the contract. I'm thinking of pulling the plug." My heart sank. I knew about that project. It was the office joke, a tangled mess of bad code and missed deadlines. "I have a proposal," he continued, leaning forward. "I want you to take it over. I'm giving you full authority to rebuild the team, change the timeline, whatever you think is necessary. It's a long shot, but I have a feeling you can handle it." I was terrified. But I was also thrilled. This was my chance. "I'll do it," I said, my voice more confident than I felt. For the next 2 months, the LogiSync project was my entire life. I worked 16-hour days. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I completely overhauled the project plan, I motivated the team, and I painstakingly went through every line of code with the developers. Sarah from marketing helped me repackage the updates for the client, making them clear and professional. It was the hardest I had ever worked in my life. Finally, the day of the final presentation to the client arrived. I stood in front of their board of directors, my hands shaking slightly, and I walked them through the new, streamlined, fully functional software. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then, the CEO of the client company stood up and started to clap. The rest of the room followed. We hadn't just saved the project. We had exceeded their wildest expectations. We won the contract, a multi-year deal that was the biggest in Innovatech's history. That day, walking out of that boardroom, I wasn't the girl who got left. I was a damn good project manager. And I was just getting started. The success of the LogiSync project changed everything for me at Innovatech. A few weeks after we secured the contract, David called me into his office again. He offered me a significant promotion to senior project lead, which came with a much healthier salary. For the first time, I wasn't just scraping by. I could breathe. I moved out of my depressing studio and into a small but bright one-bedroom apartment in a nicer part of town. I bought new furniture. I started to build a life. My confidence grew with each successful project. I discovered I had a knack for seeing the big picture, for untangling complex problems and finding simple, elegant solutions. But after 2 years at Innovatech, I started to feel that familiar itch again. I was comfortable, but I wasn't being challenged anymore. One evening, I was having dinner with Sarah, who had become one of my closest friends. "You know," she said, swirling the wine in her glass, "you're too good for Omaha, Audrey. No offense to Omaha. But your talent is bigger than this city. You should be in a place like Denver or Austin." Her words stuck with me. The plan had always been to move to Denver with Preston. The thought of it still carried a faint sting, but the sting was no longer crippling. It was just a scar. Maybe, I thought, it was time to reclaim that part of my stolen future. So, I started looking. And it turned out, my reputation from the LogiSync turnaround had spread further than I thought. I got a fantastic offer from a major tech firm in Denver. It was a huge step up. Leaving Innovatech was hard. David, Mark, and Sarah had become my family, the real family that had chosen me. But they all encouraged me to go. "Don't you dare get comfortable," David had said, giving me a fatherly hug on my last day. Denver was a whole new world. The tech scene was vibrant and competitive. I thrived on the energy. I worked hard and quickly made a name for myself within my new company. But in my spare time, a new idea began to take shape in my mind. It was an algorithm, a complex piece of software designed to optimize delivery routes for logistics companies, not just to save money, but to dramatically reduce their carbon footprint. It was my passion project. I spent my nights and weekends sketching it out, writing code, building a prototype. One night, my company sponsored a big tech networking event. I almost didn't go, but I forced myself. I was standing by myself, nursing a club soda, when an older gentleman struck up a conversation with me. We started talking about work, and I tentatively mentioned my side project. As I explained the concept, his eyes lit up. It turned out he was a well-known angel investor. "Young lady," he said, handing me his card. "That's not just a project. That's a company. When you're ready to leave your day job, you call me." 6 months later, I did. With his initial seed funding, I quit my job and officially launched my own startup, EcoRoute. The first year was a terrifying, exhilarating blur of 100-hour work weeks, endless meetings, and moments of crippling self-doubt. But it worked. The software worked. We landed our first major client, then a second, then a third. My little idea, born out of late nights in a lonely Omaha apartment, was now a real, growing business. I was no longer just a project manager. I was a CEO. 3 years had passed since the day I walked out of my parents' house. 3 years of silence. I had a new life, a new career, a new city. My past felt like a story that had happened to someone else. I was in my office in Denver one Tuesday morning, sipping my coffee and going through my emails before a big meeting, when I saw it. An email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was just one word, Audrey. My hand hovered over the delete button, but something made me click it open. My blood ran cold when I saw the signature at the bottom, with love and longing, Mom. She had created a new email address to get around the block I had put on her old one. The message began. My dearest Audrey, I know you don't want to talk to us, and I understand your anger. But I need to tell you something very important. We are going through a very difficult situation here at home, and you are the only person who can help us. My first instinct was to close it, to just erase it from my life. But a morbid curiosity kept me reading. Valerie and Preston are in very serious financial trouble. They made some bad investments in cryptocurrency last year, following the advice of some specialists they met, and they lost everything. Not just their savings, but the money your father and I loaned them to start a business. I let out an involuntary, bitter laugh. Of course. The two smartest people in the world had fallen for a crypto scam. Now they owe over $200,000 to some very dangerous people. Audrey, they are receiving threats. We had to sell our house to try and help, but it still wasn't enough. We are living in a small apartment now, and we don't know what to do. The part about my parents selling their house, that hit me harder than I expected. The house I grew up in, gone. I know we have no right to ask you for anything after what happened. But Audrey, you are our daughter, and Valerie is your sister. We saw on LinkedIn how well you're doing, that you have a good position at an important company. Could you possibly lend us the money? I promise we will pay it back, even if it takes years. LinkedIn. They had been stalking me online, keeping tabs on my success. Valerie cries every day. She knows she made a mistake, she knows she hurt you, but she is desperate. Preston is destroyed, too. They want to apologize in person. They want a chance to be a family again. The email ended with a final, emotional plea. Audrey, I know you have a good heart. You are always the most generous, most understanding daughter. Please, help us. We have no one else to turn to. I read the email 3 times, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. Pity, anger, and a grim, bitter satisfaction. The irony was, I could afford it. Thanks to a recent round of funding, I had more than enough to write them a check for $200,000 without even blinking. But it wasn't about the money. It was about what the money represented. It was a ticket back into their toxic world. A world where Valerie's problems were always my responsibility to fix. That night, I called Sarah, my friend from Omaha. We still talked every few weeks. I told her the whole story, from start to finish. When I was done, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Audrey, she finally said, her voice firm. You don't owe those people a thing. They abandoned you when you were at your lowest, and now they want you to swoop in and be their savior? No. Absolutely not. She was right. I knew she was right. The next morning, I opened the email one last time. I typed a short, direct reply. I cannot help financially. I wish you the best in finding a solution. I signed it Audrey, hit send, and then blocked the new email address. I thought that would be the end of it. I was so wrong. 2 weeks later, I was in the middle of a code review with my lead developer when my receptionist buzzed my office phone. Audrey, there are 2 people down here in the lobby, a man and a woman. They say they're your sister and brother-in-law. They're insisting they need to speak with you urgently. My blood turned to ice. They had found me. They had flown all the way to Denver and found my office. Tell them I'm in a meeting and can't be disturbed, I said, my voice tight. I already did, the receptionist replied, her voice apologetic. But they said they'll wait as long as it takes. The woman she's crying quite a bit. Of course, she was. Crying was Valerie's go-to move when things didn't go her way. I tried to work for the next 2 hours, but I couldn't focus. I just stared at my screen, the knowledge that they were sitting in my lobby, just a few floors below, making my skin crawl. Finally, I decided I had to end this, once and for all. I took the elevator down. And there they were, sitting on the plush leather couches in the reception area. The sight of them was jarring. Valerie was indeed crying, her eyes red and swollen. She was wearing clothes that looked worn and cheap. Preston sat beside her, looking gaunt, with a poorly trimmed beard and a desperate expression I had never seen on his handsome face before. They looked broken. "Audrey," Valerie gasped, jumping to her feet the moment she saw me. "Thank God. We need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about," I said, my voice as cold as ice. I kept my distance. "How did you find my office?" "Audrey, please," Preston said, stepping forward. "Just 5 minutes. It's a matter of life and death." "Life and death?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "How dramatic." "It's not drama," Valerie shrieked, causing the receptionist and a few other people in the lobby to look over. "Audrey, they said they're going to hurt us if we don't pay them by Friday. Today is Tuesday. We have nowhere else to go." The raw desperation in her voice seemed genuine, but I had learned my lesson about trusting my sister's emotional performances. "And you think that's my problem?" I asked. I turned and walked away, heading for the parking garage exit. But they followed me. They kept talking, their voices a desperate buzz behind me, pleading, begging, trying to wear me down as I walked through the building at the end of the day. "Audrey, wait!" Valerie called out, practically running to keep up as I strode towards my car in the parking garage. "Please, just listen to what we have to say." "I have nothing to hear," I said, clicking the unlock button on my keys and opening my driver's side door. And that's when Preston did something I never expected. He lunged forward and slammed his hand on my car door, preventing me from closing it. He was physically blocking me in. "Preston, get your hand off my door," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Not until you listen to us," he said, his eyes intense and a little wild. "Get your hand off my door, now," I repeated, firmer this time. A hot flash of anger and fear crawled up my neck. "Don't you understand?" Valerie cried from the other side of the car. "These people are dangerous. They said they'll do terrible things if we don't pay, and we have no one else." "That is not my problem," I said, trying to pull the door shut, but Preston held it firm. "Yes, it is your problem," he suddenly exploded, his voice echoing in the concrete garage. "You're part of this family, whether you like it or not, and families are supposed to help each other." "Family?" I laughed, a bitter, incredulous sound. Where was my family when I needed support? Where was my family when my whole world fell apart because of you two? They both started talking at once then, their voices rising in a frantic, desperate crescendo, pressing in on me from both sides. "It's just a loan, Audrey. You can charge us interest, we don't care. We're your family. You can't just let us die." And right there, with his hand on my car door and my sister crying hysterically, I knew I had to make a choice. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about my safety, my peace, my future. If you're still listening to my story, please do me a huge favor and like this video, and comment the number 1 down below. It lets me know you've given me a like, and it tells me you're here with me on this journey. Your support is a huge encouragement, and it cheers me on more than you know. Please, comment with the number 1, and let me tell you what happened next. With my heart hammering in my chest, my hand, hidden from their view inside my purse, found the small device on my keychain. It was a discreet panic button our building management had given to all tenants after a few security incidents in the area. I pressed it. Less than 3 minutes later, 2 building security guards came jogging into the parking garage, followed closely by a police car that must have been patrolling nearby. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" one of the police officers asked, his eyes taking in the scene, Preston still holding my car door, Valerie sobbing, and me standing there, tense and rigid. Yes, officer, I said, my voice surprisingly calm and steady. These people are harassing me and preventing me from leaving. Audrey, no! Valerie pleaded, her face a mask of horror. Tell them we're family. We're just talking. Sir, please step away from the vehicle, the officer ordered Preston. He finally let go of the door, holding his hands up in a gesture of surrender. Officer, this is a misunderstanding, Preston said quickly. This is my sister-in-law. We're just trying to discuss a private family matter. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, would you like them to be removed from the property? I looked at them. My twin sister, who looked like a complete stranger now, a shadow of the vibrant woman who had stolen my fiancé. And Preston, the man who was once so charming and confident, now looked desperate and pathetic. A tiny, fleeting part of me felt a pang of pity. But a much larger, stronger part of me remembered the loneliness of that motel room, the humiliation of my family's betrayal, and the years of hard work it took to rebuild my life from the rubble they had left behind. Yes, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. I want them removed. And I would like to file for a restraining order against both of them. Audrey, no! Valerie shrieked as the officers moved towards her. You can't do this to us. I'm your sister. But I could. And I did. As the security guards and police escorted a protesting Preston and a hysterical Valerie out of the parking garage, I felt a profound sense of, not satisfaction. Not joy. Just a quiet, heavy mixture of relief and sadness. There was no victory in that moment, only the grim confirmation that I had made the right choice 3 years ago when I cut them out of my life. I got in my car, my hands still shaking, and drove home. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. We filed the paperwork, and a temporary restraining order was granted immediately. Valerie and Preston were legally forbidden from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my place of work. I never found out what happened with their debt, if they found the money, or if they faced the consequences. And I realized, with a startling clarity, that I didn't care. 2 more years passed. 2 years of peace. 2 years where my company, EcoRoute, grew exponentially. We became a leader in the sustainable logistics industry. At 27 years old, I was named on Forbes' 30 Under 30 list. I had a beautiful penthouse apartment overlooking the Denver skyline and a life I had built from scratch, with my own 2 hands. The past was a locked room I never visited. Then, I received an invitation. It was to be the keynote speaker at the largest annual tech and entrepreneurship conference in the Midwest. And it was being held in my hometown. My first instinct was to say no. The thought of going back there, of walking those familiar streets, brought up a phantom ache I preferred to keep buried. But my marketing team was ecstatic. Audrey, this is a huge opportunity for national visibility, my marketing director, Jessica, argued. It's going to be live-streamed to over 50,000 people. And your story of overcoming adversity is exactly what people need to hear. Her words resonated with me. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was time to stop running from the ghost of that city and face it head-on. I accepted the invitation. I arrived the day before the conference and checked into the most luxurious hotel in the city center. It was strange being back after 5 years. The city looked the same, but I was seeing it through entirely different eyes. I was no longer the broken-hearted girl who fled her own engagement party. I was a CEO. I was confident, independent, and completely on my own terms. That first night, I decided to have dinner alone at a sophisticated new restaurant I'd read about online. I was seated at a quiet table in the corner, looking over the wine list, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Sorry for the delay, the voice said, slightly breathless. My name is Valerie, and I'll be your server tonight. I slowly lifted my eyes from the menu. And there she was. My twin sister. Her face, when she recognized me, was a picture of pure shock. She was dressed in the standard restaurant uniform, a plain white shirt and a black apron, her hair pulled back in a simple, severe bun. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the 5 since I'd last seen her. The sparkle was gone. All of it. "Audrey," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Hello, Valerie," I replied, my tone perfectly calm and neutral, as if I were greeting a distant acquaintance. For a moment, I thought she was going to faint. Her hand, holding a notepad, was shaking violently. I didn't know you were in town," she stammered. "I'm here for work," I said, my eyes dropping back down to the menu. "Could you bring me a sparkling water while I decide, please?" My professional coolness seemed to throw her even more off balance. She clearly wanted to say more, but she was on the clock. "Of course," she said, her voice barely audible. "Right away." As she scurried off to the bar, I watched her. She moved with a weariness that went bone deep. She looked exhausted. Defeated. When she returned with my water, her hands were still shaking. "Have you decided?" she asked, her eyes fixed on her notepad. "I'll have the grilled salmon with the mushroom risotto," I said. "And a glass of the Pinot Grigio." She scribbled down the order. When she finished, she lingered for a moment, clearly desperate to say something. "Valerie," I said softly, but with an edge of steel. "You have other tables waiting." She glanced around, flustered, and realized I was right. She turned to leave, but then hesitated. Are you okay?" she asked in a rush. I gave her a small, tight smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm excellent," I replied. "I've never been better." During the meal, she passed my table several times, always with that furtive, wounded look. When my food arrived, it was delicious. I ate slowly, deliberately savoring every bite. When I was finished, she came to clear the plate. "Audrey," she said in a low voice. "Can we please talk? After my shift? I get off at 11. I looked at her for a long moment. "Valerie, I have absolutely nothing to talk to you about." "Please," she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. "I know you must hate me." "I don't hate you," I interrupted, and it was the honest truth. "In fact, I don't feel anything for you at all. You and Preston are just people I used to know a long time ago." The cruelty of my indifference hit her like a slap. I saw the tears spill over and run down her cheeks. "The check, please," I said. She brought it quickly. The total was $87. I placed 2 crisp $100 bills on the table. "Audrey, wait," she said, looking at the money. "This is too much." I stood up and put on my coat. "Keep the change," I said, not even looking at her as I walked away. "It looks like you need it more than I do." The next day, it was time for my keynote. The auditorium was packed with over 2,000 people, with thousands more watching the live stream. Backstage, my heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. It was from adrenaline. "You have 20 minutes, the event organizer told me. The topic is overcoming adversity in entrepreneurship, correct?" "Perfect," I said, adjusting the lapels of my sharp, navy blue blazer. When I walked out onto the stage, the spotlights were blinding. As my eyes adjusted, I saw a sea of expectant faces. And I felt a surge of power. "Good afternoon," I began, my voice clear and steady, resonating through the auditorium. "My name is Audrey Mitchell, and today, I want to tell you a story. It's a story about how the worst betrayal of your life can become the fuel for your greatest success." A hush fell over the crowd. 5 years ago, on the night of my college graduation and what was supposed to be my engagement party, I discovered that my fiancé of 4 years was having an affair with my own twin sister. A wave of murmurs and gasps rippled through the audience. I kept my gaze steady, my voice even. When I confronted my family about this devastating betrayal, I wasn't met with comfort or support. I was told that I was being immature and selfish. I was told that I should be happy for their true love. My own parents celebrated their new relationship with champagne while I was packing my bags to leave home with nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart. I told them everything, without mentioning names, but with enough detail that anyone from my hometown would know exactly who I was talking about. I spoke of the loneliness, the data entry job, the grueling hours of study, the struggle to rebuild from nothing. The man who betrayed me, I continued, my voice ringing with conviction, told me he was sorry for wasting my time. And you know what I discovered? He was right. It was wasted time. It was time I wasted making myself small to fit into a life that was never meant for me. It was time I wasted believing I needed someone else's approval to feel worthy. The audience was completely silent, hanging on my every word. Today, 5 years later, I am the CEO of a company valued at $50 million. I employ over 200 people. And my technology is helping to revolutionize an entire industry. And all of this happened because the very people who were supposed to love me and protect me showed me, in the most painful way possible, that I could not count on anyone but myself. I spoke about resilience, about turning pain into purpose. I talked about how sometimes, the people who abandon us are actually doing us a favor. They are setting us free. The greatest favor anyone ever did for me, I concluded, my eyes sweeping across the massive crowd, was showing me their true colors when I needed them most. They handed me fuel, and I built an empire with it. Don't ever let anyone's betrayal define you. Let it fuel you. The moment I finished, the entire auditorium exploded into a standing ovation. The applause was thunderous, a wave of validation and respect that washed over me. It was one of the most gratifying moments of my entire life. Back in my hotel suite after the conference, my phone was blowing up. Messages of congratulations, interview requests from major news outlets, business proposals. But among the flood of notifications, there were 3 that stood out. The first was from my mother. Audrey, we watched your conference. I am so incredibly proud of the woman you've become, but also so deeply sad for what we lost. If you ever want to talk, we'll be here. The second was from my father. Your speech was incredible. I know we failed you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know that I recognize our mistakes. And the third was from Valerie. Sister. You were right. About everything. I destroyed our family out of selfishness. You became this amazing person, and I became exactly what I deserved. I hope you are happy forever. I read each message once. Then, without a flicker of hesitation, I deleted them. All of them. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anything at all. They were just words from ghosts. A little while later, as I was getting ready for bed, one last email came through. It was from a generic Gmail address. The sender was Preston. Audrey. I saw your speech. You're right, about all of it. I destroyed your life, and I destroyed my own, too. Valerie and I got a divorce last year. We lost everything. The house, our jobs, our families. I deliver food for an app now. I'm not asking for forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that you won. We paid the price for our mistakes. I read his email. And just like the others, I deleted it. He was wrong. I hadn't won. This was never a game. There was a complimentary bottle of Dom Perignon champagne chilling in an ice bucket in my suite, a gift from the conference organizers. I popped the cork, the sound echoing in the quiet, luxurious room. I poured myself a single, sparkling glass. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window, which offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. The city where I was born, the city where my heart was broken, the city that I had to flee to save myself. I took out my phone, took a selfie holding the champagne flute high, with the glittering city lights behind me. I posted it to all my social media with a simple caption. To the ones who leave you at your worst, thank you for the motivation to become unreachable at your best. The post went viral within hours. The next morning, I took a flight back to Denver. As the plane ascended, I looked out the window at my hometown shrinking below. I knew, with a calm certainty, that I would never be back. Not out of anger or bitterness, but simply because there was nothing left for me there. My life, my real life, was in Denver. With my company, my employees, my true friends, and the limitless possibilities of a future I had built with my own 2 hands. Valerie and Preston became exactly what they were always meant to be, a painful but valuable lesson. A lesson about knowing my own worth and never, ever accepting less than I deserve. 5 years after the worst night of my life, I was finally free. Free from them. Free from the anger. Free from the need to prove anything to anyone. I had won, not because they had lost, but because I had discovered that I was always stronger than I ever imagined. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, please know you are not alone, and you are stronger than you think. Please, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Take care of yourselves.